Glad you're back. We're starting the last part of lesson 10.5 and 10.7, and so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, there is one difference in the multiplication problem, and that is if we multiply both sides by a negative number, or if we divide both sides by a negative number, then we need to reverse the inequality. So if we multiply both sides by -1, a times -1 and b times -1, then we have to change it from less than to greater than. And if it's the other way, if it starts out a is greater than b, then if we multiply by -1, we have to change it to less than. This is very important to remember. So anytime you multiply or divide by a negative, you reverse the inequality. Okay, let's look at -4t is greater than or equal to 8. In order to get t by itself, we have to divide both sides by -4. So that gives you t by itself on the left, and it gives you -2 on the right, but instead of greater than or equal to, we have to reverse the inequality so that t is less than or equal to. Okay, so down here we just have this line. Let's choose any place on the line. I'm going to choose here for 2. There's -2, there's -2. T is less than or equal to, that means t is to the left and includes -2, so we use a bracket and then we shade to the left all the way to -infinity. And now we look at our number line and we see on the left -infinity, which always gets a parentheses. On the right we see -2 with a bracket, and there is our interval solution. So I encourage you to try it, practicing these problems on page 746 through 750. So let's review all we've learned. If you have an inequality, let's look at this example. We are going to first simplify each side separately, just like we do for equalities. So here we've combined like terms. We're going to isolate the variable term on one side using addition and subtraction. Then we're going to use multiplication or division to isolate the variable itself so that x is, and then you have an inequality symbol that expresses its relationship to some number. And then we're going to graph the solution set, which in this case x is greater than 5, so we find 5. We know that x, I'll use blue for this, x goes off to the right, it's greater than, and it does not include 5, so we include a parentheses. And then to write our interval, we look at our number line and write parentheses 5, infinity, parentheses. So let's solve this problem on the top of page 8. We have 5 times k minus 3 minus 7k is greater than or equal to 4 times k minus 3 plus 9. So using the distributive property, we say 5k minus 15 minus 7k is greater than or equal to 4k minus 12. So now we combine like terms and we get -2k minus 15 on the left, and we already have it simplified on the right. Now we want to get all of our variables on the same side, and so we want our variables on the left side, so we're going to subtract 4k from both sides. And that gives us -6k minus 15 is greater than or equal to -12. Adding 15 to both sides, we get -6 k is greater than or equal to 3, and then we're going to divide by a negative number. And so on the left we get k, then we reverse our inequality because we divided by a negative number, and on the right we get negative 6, which is negative 1/2. So let's move up here to graph it. We're going to just draw a line and then call some point negative 1/2. K is less than that, so it will go to the left. It's an equal component, so it will have a bracket. So it will look like this, with the left being negative infinity. And so when you draw your interval, you look to the left, write negative infinity, comma, the right has negative 1/2 and a bracket. And so those are how you express the solution. So you go ahead and solve and graph these problems, and then pause the video and then check back in to see how you did. In the first one, I will just skip to the answer. X is greater than negative 1. It graphs as below, and you see negative 1 to infinity with parentheses for the interval. In the second one, since it has a fraction, I just want to remind you, you need to multiply both sides by 2 to clear the fraction. So, for instance, when you multiply the left by 2, you get 2 over 1 times 1/2, and the 2's cancel. And that's how you clear the fraction, but you need to multiply the right side by 2 also. So after you do that, your solution should be that x is greater than or equal to 4, and then when you graph it, you find 4. Since there's an equal component, it's a bracket, and it goes off to the right because it's greater than or equal to. So you write your interval, bracket x, comma, infinity, parentheses. I'll go ahead and demonstrate the last one. You distribute your 7x minus 21 plus 8x is less than 16 plus 8x. And so if you subtract 8x from both sides, the 8x's actually go away. And then you add 21 to both sides. And you get 7x on the left is less than 37, and then you have to divide by 7, which gives you x is less than 37 sevenths. And so now you have this fraction to carry around, but it's no problem because all you're going to do is come down to your number line and pick any point and call it 37 sevenths. And then you're going to draw toward the left because x is less than, and your interval will be negative infinity to 37 sevenths, like that. Okay, I'd like you to go ahead and try this challenge problem and then come back and we'll do it together. Alright, to do this you want to clear your fractions by multiplying everything by, let's see, we're going to multiply everything by negative 6. Your least common denominator is 6, and so when you multiply everything by negative 6, you clear out some of those negatives. You just have to remember to reverse the inequality. So we have negative 6, which we'll write as negative 6 over 1 times negative 2/3 times r minus 3 minus negative 6 over 1 times 1/2 is less than negative 6 over 1 times 1/2 times 5 minus r. Okay, so coming back to the left, 3 goes into 6 2 times. Negative times a negative makes a positive, and so we have 2 times 2 is 4, times r minus 3 minus, and then we have 2 goes into 6 3 times, and then we have the negative, so we have negative 3 is less than, and then we have 2 goes into 6 3 times, so we have negative 3 times 5 minus r. And so now using the distributive property, the minus and negative becomes plus a positive, and this negative sign here gets distributed to make this minus a plus, and you can check that out by changing subtraction to addition to see how that works out. Plus 3r. Okay, and now I'm starting to get messy, so I'm going to rewrite it down here so that we can have a cleaner solution. Okay, now I've made a mistake that's very important, and that is that when I multiplied by negative 6, I did not reverse the inequality. So I need to come back here and reverse it. Reverse it. There it again, and finally here. So that gives us 4r minus 9 is greater than 3r minus 15. You subtract 3r from both sides and you get r minus 9 is greater than negative 15, and then adding 9 to both sides you get r is greater than negative 6. So we come here, call this negative 6, since r is greater than negative 6 and there's no equal component, we use a parentheses, and then our shading goes off to the right because r is greater than negative 6, so it goes off to the right to infinity, and we look to the left as we write our interval, pick up negative 6 parentheses, and to the right we get infinity parentheses. At the bottom of page 8 we look specifically at three-part inequalities, which are written so that the symbols point to the left and toward the smaller number. So we only use less than symbols and we put the smaller number on the left. So let's solve this inequality using the addition property. We're going to subtract 2 from all three parts of that inequality. And that gives us 1 is less than x is less than 6. That's our simplified three-part inequality. So we can easily graph that. We find 1, put a parentheses there, and then x is larger than 1, 1 is less than x, and then we go until we get to 6, and we put a parentheses there. So that is how you graph a three-part inequality. Infinity is not involved in this, and when you write it, you look at the left and you see a 1 with the parentheses, you write a comma, you look at the right and you see a 6 with the parentheses. So that's all there is to that. So go ahead and do the second one. You'll have to do it in 2 steps. You'll have to add something to all three parts, and then you'll have to divide all three parts by something. So in the second one, first you add 1 to all sides, and you get negative 7 is less than or equal to 3r is less than or equal to 0. And then you divide everything by 3, so that gives you negative 7/3 is less than or equal to r is less than or equal to 0, because 0 divided by 3 is 0. So then you know you're going to have 2 parentheses, well actually in this case you're going to have brackets because you've got equal components. You find negative 7/3 on the number line and put a bracket there, and then you find 0 on the number line, put a bracket there, and then you shade in between. So that's the solution set expressed on a number line, and then you look to the left and see a bracket by your negative 7/3, so you write that, and then you look to your right and see a 0, and so that's your solution in interval form. So go ahead and work these two problems on page 9, the try it problems, and see if you come up with the correct answer. So the solutions are -1/9 with a parentheses on the left and 1/3 with a bracket on the right for the first one, and for the second one -3 on the left and 2/5 with the parentheses on the right. The -3 has a bracket. Okay, exercise 9 is a good word problem to know how to do if you want to calculate your grades in any of your classes and find out what you need to score on your remaining tests to achieve the overall grade you want. So Brent has 86, 88, and 78 on 3 tests. He wants an average of at least 80 after his 4th test. What are the possible scores he can make on that test? So to get an average, you add the 4 tests together and divide by 4. So we're going to call X his 4th test. So we add 86 plus 88 plus 78 plus X over 4. And he wants that to be greater than or equal to 80. He wants the average to be more than or equal to 80. That gives us 252 plus X over 4 is greater than or equal to 80. Now I'm going to switch to red, come over here, and I'm going to multiply both sides by 4, so I have 252 plus X is greater than or equal to 320. Now I can subtract 252 from both sides, and I'm left with X is greater than or equal to 68. So Brent has to get a 68 or better in order to average 80 on his tests. In the last example, a rental company charges $20 to rent a chainsaw plus $9 per hour. Tom can spend no more than $65 to clear some logs from his yard. So what is the maximum amount of time he can use the rented saw? So the cost of the total amount that he's going to be charged is the initial payment of $20 plus $9 per hour times T, the number of hours he's going to have, and he wants that to be less than or equal to $65. So we subtract 20 from both sides and then divide by 9, and T is less than or equal to 5 hours. So you can go ahead and work the try it problems on page 754. I really urge you to do that. And that is the end of the lesson for 10.5 and 10.7.